Welcome to Conscious Curiosities, where we unlock the wisdom of the universe that lives within us. I'm your host, Maria Luz, an astrologer, board-certified hypnotist, and psychic medium. I'll share bits and pieces of my backstory throughout the episodes, so let's jump right in. Have you heard your astrology-loving friends talk about their big three, and you looked yours up, but you have no idea what they mean to your life? Well, you are in the right place. In this first episode, I will be going step by step through how to identify your big three, learn about their energies, and reflect on how those energies play out in your life. This process is adapted from a webinar I gave entitled Birthchart Basics, Your Big Three. In this webinar, we ended with a group hypnosis to integrate the energies of the big three most useful to our life's purpose, and that would enable us to feel harmonious in our lives. So the next episode will be a version of that hypnotic journey so that you can do that at home. For today, we'll focus on the astrology piece. There are a few resources I think you will find very helpful to have handy while we go through this step-by-step process. You can obtain both of them free by subscribing to my website, marialuz.online. They are the 12 zodiac signs explained and the key to glyphs, signs, and planets. You can also use the internet, our friend Google, or a basic astrology book. Let's begin. An astrology birth chart, also known as a natal chart, is a snapshot of the celestial body's positions at the moment of birth. It displays the positions of the sun, moon, planets, and also, in case you didn't know, in astrology, we call the sun and moon planets. We are not dummies. We know that they are actually not planets in astronomy, but that is what they are called in astrology. And as well as other celestial points, such as the Ascendant, which is also known as the rising sign, and the midheaven, are all displayed with the native, or the human, being at the center. Again, when you look back at when astrology began thousands of years ago, that was the common thought, that humans, the person was at the center of the sphere of the celestial world. We can use our birth chart to gain insights into our tendencies based on the position and aspects, or the angular relationships. Yes, there is math, warning. However, all the apps and different computers can do that math for you these days. So there are aspects between the celestial bodies, and these give us some hints as to these internal energies that we experience. And then each planet and point in the chart represents these different components of your psyche and really your natural mode of operating, your modus operandi. While the houses, I don't know why I slipped into Latin. I never studied that, but it sounded kind of cool. So your MO, while the houses, they fall into provide further insights into the area of life these energies manifest in a person's life. We're not going to go too much into houses in this episode because it's a lot. You need a gateway to astrology, and I think just understanding your big three is the perfect bite-sized gateway to pull you into the rabbit hole that I am in. Okay, so because we have the entirety of the birth chart in us, we contain the energies of all of the signs, even if there are no planets or points where that sign resides. So we still feel its energy in that area of our life and when it is that season. So currently, as I'm recording this, we are just going into Aries season. So we are all going to feel some of that Aries drive for action this next month. The other thing that this points out is we all have those maybe old-fashioned biases, like I don't associate with Aquarius people, or I don't date Geminis, or whatever your dealio may be. And this knowledge that we contain all of the signs within us should help us get over that probably incorrect bias. Just throwing that out there. And why should we be consciously curious about our big three? So aside from what I just said, here are some other examples of things you might learn today. 1, how to motivate yourself. 2, what may be most important to you when faced with making important choices. 3, what type of work you will find most satisfying or meaningful in your life. And 4, what you need in a partner. And 5, how to manage your energy. Now, we'll go ahead and get started on the step-by-step process. You may want to have a journal handy or something else, pen and paper or typing, whatever your particular mode of writing best is for you. Step 1. You'll need to download a copy of your birth chart if you don't have it already. In addition to your date of birth, you will need the location and time. If you don't know the time, just let the app or the program online assign the default, or you can go ahead and enter 12 noon. And I give some suggestions in the show notes for where you can go online to download. Those are Cafe Astrology, astroseek.com, and astro.com. You will end up with a circle that looks like a wheel or a clock, I guess, with little lines like a pie or a pizza. In the diagram, the circle represents the celestial sphere with the Earth at the center. As I explained earlier, back in the day, that was the prevalent thought. The circle is divided into 12 sections, and each represents one of the 12 astrological houses. Each house corresponds to specific areas of life, such as self, home, relationships, career, etc. The houses are numbered counterclockwise, starting from the ascendant, or that 9 o'clock position. And the ascendant represents the constellation or the sign that was on the eastern horizon at the time of birth. The houses are further divided by lines called cusps, which mark the beginning of each house and indicate the point where one house ends and the next begins. These would be the little slices of pizza or pie that you see. Note that the ascendant sign changes about every 2 hours, which is why astrologers are so obsessed with you getting the time of birth. Regardless of the sign that is on the cusp of the first house, the signs always follow one another in the same order. So the clock is going to look different for most people. However, the signs will always proceed in the same order of 12, from Aries to Pisces. Now, there are numerous different systems for dividing up the chart. Most astrologers use the system from the lineage in which they were trained. As I am trained in the Jeffrey Wolf Green evolutionary astrology lineage, I use the Porphyry house system, which is a quadrant house system, if that means anything to you, as opposed to an equal sign house system. Again, I'm not going to get into too much detail about houses in this episode, but if you curious cats wanted to know, I put that information out for you, meow meows. Step 2. Determine your sun, moon, and rising signs. Refer to my key to glyphs or your other reference to see the symbol or the glyph for the sun and the moon and for each sign. The ascendant may, again, not really have a sign associated with it on the chart that you downloaded. It may just be that sign that's on that horizon point, on that 9 o'clock point. Or it might have AS or ASC marked on your chart. In most of those free chart generators, you will see the glyph for the planet sticking towards the outside of the wheel. So, for example, the sun, it's a circle with a dot in the middle. You might see that, let's say, sticking towards the outside of the wheel just under that 9 o'clock position. And then it'll be followed by a number, which are the degrees, and then the glyph or the symbol, which would be for the sign. So, for example, if you have Taurus on your first house, and then your sun is sitting inside your first house, you will see the sun and then a couple of numbers, and then you'll see the glyph for Taurus, which is like a little circle with little bull horns on it. Then you'll see another number, and that's the minutes. And possibly you'll also see an RX for retrograde, and that would be closest to the center of the wheel. Some of the apps also generate a handy-dandy table with the sign, house, degree, and minute of key points and planets. Once you've located your sun, moon, and your ascendant, you'll just want to write down the sign for each of your big three. This is where that pen and paper or little note that you have on your computer come in handy. Step 3. We will explore your sun, moon, and rising sign energy using the 12 zodiac signs explained list. And again, you're welcome to use any other resource. And in fact, that zodiac signs explained, I pulled from Astrology for Yourself by Bloch and George. And that's where I pulled some of those key phrases and what they call skillful and unskillful applications. Once you have your reference, you will sit down again with your writing implements or your computer, and keep in mind that the sun represents your ego self, your guiding light, your vitality, your conscious purpose. And I also want to note that some people just don't identify with their sun sign, and they write off astrology completely because of it. And this may happen because we are so much more than our sun sign. Just like up in the sky, the sun's position alone is not equivalent to the weather. The same goes for us. And the conditions in our life, like the weather, may cause us to hide our sun's characteristics, even from ourselves. Like think of the sun going behind a cloud or clouds for an extended period of time. I guess the other reason why people don't identify with their astrological sun sign is bad astrology. So they've read some certain, what are marketed as women's magazines, horoscopes, and they kind of rewrite the same little good vibes or bad vibes, whatever the case may be for each sign. And that's pretty terrible. So come back to astrology if that was your experience. Moving away from the sun, we next tackle the moon. The moon represents your intuition, your moods averaged out, and daily habits. It is often how we see ourselves. Some people say it is the sign that you display when you are most comfortable. I don't exactly agree because some moon signs are just not very comfortable, even to the person themselves. But it is how you are when you are by yourselves, comfortable or not. It will also be the emotional motivation behind what your sun or your ego wants to achieve. We can have those, sun ego aspirations, but unless we are fully emotionally on board with them, we likely won't achieve them, or we will, and it's just going to fall flat and feel blah. Why did I even bother with that? The moon sign and placement also indicates how you make others feel emotionally secure. This may come out as just, again, when you get past that getting to know you stage where they see you on the ascendant, which we'll talk about next, and then they get to know your sun, and then finally they get to know your moon sign. And if they are for you, then your moon sign is why. It's kind of how they feel emotionally secure with you. You don't want to ignore it when that shows up for you too with other people. And it also shows how you learn and what motivates you to do something for yourself or not, such as going for those big sun goals, but also just, again, those daily habit things like motivating you to do your daily exercise. What type of exercise is going to do that for you? So for some people, depending on their moon, it's going to be super intense. And for other people, it's going to be more kind of grounded. The next is the Ascendant rising sign, and that represents your instinctive approach to new situations and how others perceive you. It's when the baby was born, if you were thinking about that clock or that celestial sphere again. And that's how you come into the world, not knowing what you're going to expect to find. As it is you seeing things in the filter of this sign, you don't always realize that you are carrying that filter around on top of you. It's just kind of stuck to you. And just a note for my more intermediate folks out there, the planetary ruler of the rising sign is also called your chart ruler, and it usually shows up in significant themes in your life. Back to your pen and paper or your computer, what you'll want to do, keeping these energies of the sun, moon, and rising sign in mind, will be to look at your reference and write down your sun sign's key phrase and any skillful or unskillful expressions or applications that resonate with you. And then the same for your moon and the same for your ascendant. And don't spend too much time pulling out little key phrases or words that resonate with you. Actually, the more you kind of just do it off of first instinct, the better, because that'll kind of give you a more honest picture of what these energies look like in your life. As you are doing that little writing exercise, I'll go ahead and give you some examples from my own birth chart to get you thinking about the energies in your life. And then in step 4, I'll give you some journal prompts that you can do some deeper reflecting. My sun is in Leo, which is the sign ruled by the sun. It is a fire sign, yang in modality and with a fixed energy. Leo's purpose is to express themselves in order to self-actualize. Think of Leo as the little child who looks at themselves in the mirror and says, "I am beautiful," or "I am strong." Not in a narcissistic way, but recognizing their innate, unique light to shine on themselves and the world around them. In our culture, this is pretty quickly squashed, and it was for me. I didn't identify with my sun sign until very recently. As a girl, especially a brown, small girl growing up in the US, I learned that modesty and quiet servitude equaled being good, and that stepping into your confidence, that was for, I don't know, taller people, men, but certainly not for me. So again, it's only been recently that I've allowed myself to acknowledge what truly lights me up and then shout that from the rooftops courageously, publicly, confidently. My moon is in Aries, which is ruled by the planet Mars. Aries is a fire sign like Leo and Yang as well, but it differs in that it carries a cardinal energy. A phrase I have heard about Aries is ready, fire, aim. Again, it is just so biased to action. Cardinal is that first step, that going first, being the first one to fire. And planning is secondary or non-existent. In my life, this is manifested as feeling emotions very impulsively and intensely. Remember, the moon is your emotional world. So Aries energy projected onto emotional world is just very like ants in your pants. I gotta do something with this emotion. I really had to work to rein in my desire to act on every emotion, and I've not always been successful. Although now that I don't drink alcohol, it's much more smooth sailing. This energy serves me, though, in my physicality. I'm strong and I'm pretty fearless about working out. I did marathons and ultra marathons for about 25 years. And although I've switched to movement, which is more gentle, such as yoga, which I just adore now and do every day, I still regularly have to do those tough spin and strength classes to appease my inner warrior. And I sometimes find myself on my Peloton, looking at the leaderboard, trying to chase a 27-year-old, and I'm 53. On to the Ascendant, or rising. My rising sign is Scorpio, which is ruled by the planet Pluto. This is a water sign, unlike my other two fire. However, some people laughingly call it the fire sign of the water signs because it is so dang intense. It is a yin modality, so unlike the other two, Leo and Aries are yang, this one is yin, and it is fixed energy, same as Leo. However, Scorpio wants to get to the truth of the matter, so goes deeper and more quietly than Aries or Leo kind of enter the room. It has a natural psychological curiosity and fluency. Scorpios make good detectives, and for years this is essentially what I was. I started out my career doing research in the lab and then moved on to clinical research, doing clinical trials, figuring out which drugs worked best for which diseases in which populations. And now it is your turn. Step 4. Reflect or journal on the descriptions of your big 3 signs. I suggest you continue your exploration after this. Go ahead and take this as homework. I think you will really have some pretty big insights, especially if you weren't even aware of what your ascendant sign was and how other people see you. The first prompt. Do you identify with one sign and planet combo more than the others? What, if anything, surprises you? Knowing what the signs represent, do you see how that energy manifests in your life? Have the big 3 played their roles differently throughout your life or in different areas of your life? And those are the journal prompts for you to explore on your own. I hope this episode has provided you with a jumping off point to further investigate what makes you tick from an astrology lens. And if you are like most people, you are also now super curious about your partner, your kids, your coworkers. What do they have hiding under there besides their sun sign that you may have been aware of from those office birthday parties? By learning our own and others' astrology, we develop more compassion for the human condition. It's not just curiosity. We see that some of those tendencies were just programmed into us. And when we're not aware, we slide into the path of least resistance, which can be fine in some contexts, but it's good to know that we have a broad spectrum of tools and signs to lean into, and so does everybody else. And that empowers you to be consciously curious about your astrology. Bye-bye.